Who told you could paint fairies on the wall, huh?
They're not fairies. They're birds.
Well, who told you could do that, huh?
Well, you did.
What?
You said, make place look all right. I think it looks all right.
No painting in this corner. Huh? Don't want paint on my boots, no paint on my gear. Rest is fine.
No.
Birds or fairies, I don't mind.
Don't do that.
That was a clip from the movie Maudie, and with me here, I'm very proud to say, is one of the stars of the film, Ethan Hawke. Ethan, how you doing?
Yeah, doing really well.
Excellent. All right. Well, it's great to have you here. For the lucky listeners of ours who are yet to see this movie, can you just set up exactly who Maudie is and where your character fits in?
Maud Lewis was a Canadian folk artist of very small note during her lifetime, but in the years since she passed, her celebrity has been growing. And what she suffered from juvenile arthritis, and she was pretty mistreated by her family. She was a strange young woman, and kind of what they called a broken, her spine and her hands and her feet and her attitude were unique. And she really couldn't stand her family and went away there was a fisherman who lived alone on this hill, and something was wrong with him too. And she got a job as his maid, and which is a pretty comic idea because his house that he lived in was smaller than this studio that we're in right now. I think it was 14 by 14, just a little shack he lived in. But he would go on these long fishing trips, and he needed somebody to clean it up. And so he got this live-in maid, that he could. Basically, he was pretty, from all reports, true to the period of rural gentlemen of that time, was a pretty misogynistic dude, And the story of the movie is their love affair and how the power of this woman, her art is incredibly simple and incredibly beautiful. And by simple, what I mean is some of her paintings are as cliche as like 3 kittens or something. But yet the way that she paints these kittens, something about it is absolutely stunning. And she's somebody who kind of what's the word when you turn metal into gold?
Yeah, of course. An alchemist.
Alchemist, thank you. And she turns pain into beauty. She changes hearts. And I was very moved by the story. And when I read it, and Sally Hawkins is just a tremendous young actress, and I thought that the intersection of her and this part could be special.
Unbelievable. I mean, really is. And you say you were moved by the story. I mean, I was incredibly, and I knew very little. Did you know much about Maud Lewis before? Had you heard of her?
I had heard of her. I have a place in Nova Scotia, believe it or not, is weird. At one point in my life, about 15 years ago or so, I was trying to, whatever, it doesn't matter how depressed I was. But
I'd read somewhere that you had a place in Nova Scotia. I wasn't sure if I dreamt it because I read it a long time ago.
No, I did. I got a little cabin up there, and I go up there in the summer with my kids and stuff, and I've kind of fallen in love with it. And I heard about this artist who her house is in a museum.
Yeah.
And that sticks in your brain when you hear that. But that's all I knew.
Right.
And that is Maud Lewis's masterpiece, is the house she
itself.
lived in. And the movie kind of documents them. I mean, most of the movie is just Sally and living in this tiny space, but
which you're almost too big for.
Yeah, it's a tiny space.
Made me laugh.
But she painted the whole thing backwards and forwards.
Incredible.
And when you see it in a museum, the local people, when she passed, or when he passed, because he died later, they just didn't want to see it rot, and they just moved the whole house to a museum. And it's, the stairs have grass growing through it. I mean, she painted this squirrels and fairies and flowers and deer and oxen.
It's something about the way she brings color to an otherwise kind of bleak landscape. And it's the same within the house itself, the sort of grayness and the bleakness and the dirtiness of the house, and then also to your character Everett as well, bringing some color. And like you say, he begins as this misogynist. In fact, when I look back at your career and some of the challenges that you've had as an actor and as a director, and a writer. It makes me think: could there be a tougher challenge than being mean to Sally Hawkins?
Film? Yeah, it's a tough road to hoe, huh? Yeah, it's
because the first sort of half hour of the movie,
he's pretty tough with her. Yeah, one of the things that I liked most about the movie is that you often see relationships in theater or dramatized, and they're kind of one thing. And anybody who's been in a living relationship is it's usually a lot of things at once. And the idea that somebody could behave badly and also be worthy of love, is an idea that movies don't love. Bad people get, we want bad things to happen. Somebody lies, they're a bad person. Somebody does something abusive,
it's
they're
never
bad.
that black and white.
And in life, it's so
Life
much
is
more
great.
complex than that. And what I loved about this Maud and Everett's love affair is that the power dynamic is constantly shifting. And it's rare to see a true account of a heart that changed. And it's it's beautiful to watch her impact. There's that old Shaker expression. It's lots of different expressions, but leave every room cleaner than you found it.
Right.
And Maud had this power of, even if it's this tiny little shack in a snow-covered hill that's musty and smelly, by the time she leaves it, it's covered in flowers and life.
That's why it feels wrong to call it a biopic, even though it is a biographical picture. It feels
Primarily
more
about
like
their relationship.
it feels more like a love story. I mean, there's a moment where, without throwing any spoilers in there, you're completing what is quite a contentious piece of DIY. Okay, and there's a look as you're doing it, which kind of says so many things, but in a moment it feels like it says, you win again.
Yeah.
And me and my wife were watching it, and we were just in hysterics because it said so much about the politics of a marriage in one look. And that for me was the film all over.
It's funny because it was really, my wife is the one. I just wasn't reading the script, and my wife really was passionate about this movie.
Right.
She really wanted me to do this movie, and she wanted to believe in a world where people would make a movie like this and people would go see a movie like this. Because of exactly what you're saying about you and your wife watching it. It's somehow to get to see and smell a relationship and all of its weirdness,
Totally.
Real relationships are just weird. Human sexuality is weird. People are weird. The way we love each other is weird. And it's never one thing all the time. And that's what I think my wife really liked about it, is sometimes I play this role and then it shifts.
Yeah.
And now I want to play this part and you better let me.
And then the frustration of being in love is right there. You can't help but go along with things. You can't help but be the loser one day and the winner the next. And I think that's why I say it elevates. It's elevated above the nature of just a biopic.
Yeah, I hope so. Biopics largely aren't interesting to me, and it's Maud Lewis's art is interesting, and I think that Aisling Walsh is this Irish director, and I think that she did a great job of creating. She created an environment where all she cared about was the acting. It was like she got this house built in the middle of a hill. We went out into the middle of nowhere. It was freezing cold, and we just did these scenes all day. And what's funny about it is a lot of times you go to a film set and all they care about is the cinematography. Or you go to a film set and there's some writer-director and all he cares about is the word that you say or whatever.
There's no flexibility.
Yeah, and Aisling and Sally had worked together before, and Aisling understood there's a slight bit of magic to Sally, and she doesn't think like most actors, and she doesn't operate on one level, and it's really fun to be around. And Aisling really created space for our imagination, which is kind of what people think that being a good actor's director is like telling people what to do, or I don't know what they think it is, but most people don't. With somebody like Sally particularly, what you really want to do is create a world and let her inhabit it and let her imagination run free and then chase after it, which is what I did. And it was a little bit like a dream. You know, what I love about making movies is you're away on location. So it's this, it's a dream
I
life.
hear you.
You know, and I see the movie now, and it's almost like echoes of this dream I had a year and a half ago. When it almost feels like a life I had lived.
It's fascinating that you say, you know, that idea of letting the imagination run free and chasing after it. Because as I was watching, I was thinking about the script, Sherry White's script. There's so many amazing, beautiful lines, but there's also a lot of grunting by both of you. There's sort of grunts and guttural noises, which also say a lot. And I was thinking, well, that can't be scripted. So
it was really fun. You know what Sally and I would do? We would sit there and work on these things, and basically decided that if we could cut a line, we would.
Right.
That do I have to say that, or is it possible? Like, could I communicate that? Because we just didn't buy that these people chatted all the time. You know, they weren't sitting there talking about the baseball game or how good, you know, Rihanna is or something like that. You know, they're rural people. I mean, this is a guy who thought people from Halifax were pretentious. Okay, this is a guy. I saw this little clip of him in an interview. This was the whole key to the character to me. I was fascinated by this. This BBC company is actually these guys are interviewing Maud Lewis because somebody was interested in naive art. You know, was interviewing her, and towards the end of the interview, Everett is just standing behind her in the darkness, and they said, you know, what do you do? You know, and he says, I cook sometimes. You know, and they said, well, what's your favorite meal? And he says, my favorite meal? Bread. And I thought, all right, this is an interesting person.
there's a moment early on. I think it's possibly the first moment you feel some tenderness between the two of them, and I think it's when Sally says the line about difference. You know, a lot of people feel uncomfortable or hate people that are a little bit different, and you see this little spark in Everett's eyes. And you know that this is going to be an intriguing journey, and that's exactly what it turns out to be. I think it's an incredible piece of work,
thanks.
And a fantastic job by both of you.
You know, I'm sorry. I know you're about to say something more interesting than what I'm about to say, but
no, go for it.
You know, one of the things that I'm happy about it, which is nothing to do really with the movie, but with audiences, which is that we're constantly made to think that all anybody cares about is things blowing up, and that's the only story that people want to be told. And I've been fascinated watching. You know, I really kind of thought nothing would happen with this movie, and it's been amazing to watch it play at festivals and then watch it get a release and get to be here. And you're asking me these incredibly interesting questions about it. I'm thinking about the journey of this movie and how pleased I am that something so delicate could find its way through the zeitgeist.
And that's why it shouldn't be sold and packaged as, you know, a biopic about an artist. End of story. It's a cinematic love story, and it really is cinematic because you've got, I mean, it's Newfoundland, right? Shot as Nova Scotia.
Yeah, beautiful.
But it's still a spectacular watch. What do we see you in next?
Let's see. I don't know. What did I do next? I have this movie I love called First Reformed. It's directed and written by Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and everything.
Amazing.
It's probably the best script I've ever. It's definitely one of the top 3 scripts I've ever worked on. Now, whether that means the movie is going to be good, I don't know. But I do know that the subject matter. I play a priest who's having a major spiritual crisis brought on by the church's response to climate change and why they're not a leader. And he starts to wonder why he's not doing more. And it takes him down a very interesting road.
All right. Sounds exciting. I'm excited. You know what? It's been an absolute pleasure to meet. I could do another half an hour, and they've been telling us to wrap up for some time. So I appreciate your time.
Sorry.
No, it's awesome, man.
Well,
it's great to meet you. And
much.
no, I don't mind that. I'm exactly the same. So we're probably a bad fit for radio. Take it easy.
Yeah, appreciate it.